I have a son and I have a daughter. But let me talk about the daughter because that's the reason I'm posting about this today. She's an absolute nightmare. And when I tell you she's toxic, manipulative, narcissistic, that's only scratching the surface of how deep her betrayal and hatred for me goes. So let me walk you through how my daughter absolutely is ruining my life. I had a good family life in the beginning. My marriage was beautiful at first. We were young and carefree, and with just the two of us, we had the financial freedom to go and enjoy ourselves. But we unexpectedly became parents without proper preparation, you see. We were very young when our daughter was born, and my husband had to work more to support us. As a result, I had to start working as well, and my daughter grew up mostly on her own. By the time my daughter was 3, my son was born, and my husband had started to become an alcoholic due to financial stress. When my daughter turned 5, she took on the responsibility of looking after her younger brother. She could have been a good person, but perhaps we contributed to her becoming a bad one. I can't stop blaming myself for it. After my son turned 1, my husband died in a car accident while driving under the influence of alcohol. Wow. Caroline could not accept this situation, and she was a daddy's girl in every single way. After the incident, Caroline began to take care of Zach and work hard at school, becoming a good child. During this time, I was mostly at work, and I know I wasn't a good parent, but I loved them so much that they were always on my mind while I was out working. This situation continued until Caroline went to high school, but she started to become very rebellious. She changed suddenly, and I thought it was just the teenage years, but I kept getting complaints from her school, and we started arguing all the time. Unlike Caroline, Zach became more optimistic and helpful. Caroline either came home late or stayed out with her friends, and we could not communicate properly because she blamed me for everything. One day, the police called and informed me that Caroline was in detention due to violence. I found out from the police about the kind of people in her group of friends, which made me even angrier. I understand she had a tough childhood, but that doesn't justify her actions. When I pressured her to change her group of friends, she ran away from home. She came back a month later in a terrible state, and at that time I suspected she was using some substance. So I admitted her to a clinic for rehab. I think Zach became a bit more introverted due to seeing Caroline's condition. Caroline managed to get herself together until she finished high school and expressed her desire to attend college while working. I supported her because I believed she was on the right track. Since she was in another city for her studies, I tried to call her often, but Caroline started to respond less and asking for more money. One day, I received a call from an unknown number, informing me that Caroline had ended up in the hospital due to excessive alcohol use. I rushed to the hospital, but Caroline had not fully recovered. Once her treatment was complete, the argument started again, and she continued to blame me for everything. She even blamed me for her father's death. I didn't know what to do. Our relationship remained characterized by fights and disagreements, and as Caroline changed and grew more hostile, I began to see her as if she were not my daughter. Well, the guilt that I felt seemed to fade as Caroline distanced herself from me, and it felt like I was becoming a stranger to her as well. In contrast, Zach adopted an entirely different attitude, becoming more talkative and, there for me. And on the day I picked up Caroline from the hospital, we fought. She didn't want to come home, so I ended up dropping her off at her place, and we never saw each other again. So I devoted the rest of my time to Zach as if he were my only child. It was as if Caroline had never existed. Zach had earned a college scholarship, and I just felt immense pride as his mom. He never asked about his sister or his father, and he always had a respectable and loving child. He had a girlfriend in college, and he even brought her home to meet us on New Year's. She's beautiful, kind, very intelligent. Jasmine and Zach would visit me during every holiday, and we'd spend time together, creating a happy family. I know what you might be thinking, that I did not care about or invite my daughter, but that's not the case. I tried calling Caroline. I left her long messages every holiday and even invited her. However, she never accepted any of my invitations or visited home, and she didn't come to see me or her brother. She informed me once that she was working and living a normal life. Our relationship was so strained that even when performing my monthly duties, I felt like I was not Caroline's mother. Sometimes it seems as if we were enemies. As soon as Zach finished college, he landed a great job and eventually got married to Jasmine. Caroline attended the wedding, but she looked very frail and was quiet. Despite being 27 years of age, her face seemed to have lost its vitality. That day, I should have provided support to Caroline as her mother, but she felt like a stranger who was not invited to the wedding. And just 3 months after the wedding, a hospital called again, and I was overwhelmed with a sense of anger and resentment. It felt like it was either the end of our relationship or the opportunity for her to change, as I've grown tired of her constant disruptive behavior. I quickly went to the hospital where I was informed that Caroline had ended up in a hospital again to alcohol poisoning. I was astonished and astounded by what I heard. It felt like the universe was pushing me to abandon her, but against my instincts, I decided to take responsibility and offer her one last chance. When I arrived at the hospital, Caroline was sitting there crying. Once she calmed down, she told me that she started to drink again, lost her job, and could not pay rent, which led to her eviction. She had called me because the hospital bills were unpaid, and I was full of frustration upon hearing this, and I didn't want to leave her there. Against all odds, I took her home and offered her a place to stay. I told her that she could live with me and that she still had a place in my life, but I just made it clear that I would not tolerate her destructive behavior any longer. Even though I didn't have any abundance of resources, I provided her with a small allowance, considering to be very necessary. She was unhappy with it, as expected, but I was unable to give her more. I felt that it was a reasonable allowance for her, given her recent struggles, but she was Caroline, and she was never satisfied. Her turbulence period continued, and while I was fully aware of the difficulties that she's been through, I decided to keep my comments to myself. I wanted to act with compassion, even though it was Caroline, because who could turn against their child? Well, let's say I did, and people would blame me. I knew that I would be blamed, and I did not want to experience it. I knew my home was simply too small, but it seemed like an opportunity to show a bit of humanity. You might think that, turning against your own child is unfathomable, but let's say I did it. Well, I did really, and I could not tolerate her any longer. After living with me for a month, she began requesting money all the time, and I was only able to provide her with a small allowance. I thought it was just what she needed for her essential expenses, and of course she was Caroline. She was dissatisfied, and she was going through a challenging period. However, her problems were escalating to the point where I could not handle them any longer. She claimed that she had no room of her own. Despite knowing that my house was small, she often left the house and did not return until very late. She would come back drunk, break beer bottles, and make a mess around the house, and after days of constant arguments, I was so exhausted that I decided to call my daughter-in-law, thinking that she actually might be able to help. However, Jasmine informed me that Caroline had pulled a similar stunt before, falsely accusing Zach of infidelity, which had resulted in an altercation, and she refused to assist her. Caroline's actions have escalated to the point where I could not handle it any longer. Despite being Caroline's mother, I had enough. I ended up calling the police after she had assaulted me repeatedly, and the police arrived and saw that Caroline had assaulted me as well, and they immediately intervened. That night, Caroline was charged with family violence and resisting arrest and assaulting a police officer. She was sent to a rehabilitation center to receive treatment. I hope you won't judge me too harshly. I just could not be a better mother and distance myself from Caroline. It was the only option. She had caused me absolutely just so much pain, and I wanted revenge. Was I wrong to seek a bit of revenge? Update number 1. Hey guys, I read some of the negative comments. It makes me feel like a bad mom, and it's true that I initially blamed myself as well. I used to think that maybe I should have been a better mother. At first, I even wondered if I had pushed Caroline onto this path. However, she made all her choices knowingly. She decided on everything herself, and I gave her numerous chances. Yet she turned against me and hurt me. I don't understand why I should forgive her more. When Zach saw what Caroline did to me, he got very angry and came to support me. He assured me that it was not my fault, and these were all Caroline's choices. I know that I wasn't the person who could have done certain things better, and Caroline could make choices, and she wasn't the one in control. So I was not a bad mother. Caroline was a bad person. While Caroline was in a rehabilitation center, I tried to visit her, but she never agreed to see me. I don't know why she hated me so much, and I thought maybe I had gone too far with my desire for revenge. I believed that if we talked, we could sort things out. When Caroline was very young, I used to brush her hair and would never go to sleep without kissing her goodnight, even if I came home late from work. I tried my best just to prevent her from seeing her father's alcoholism. It disgusted me that she resembled her father rather than me. Every time I looked at Caroline, it felt like all those beautiful memories never existed, as if I suffered in vain for her. Zach did not want me to see Caroline. He didn't believe that she could recover, and he didn't even believe that she was sick. I knew she was right. Due to the harm Caroline had caused me, I was going back and forth to the hospital. Whenever I went to the hospital, Zach would accompany me, sometimes bringing Jasmine with him, and they tried their best not to leave me alone. Zach and I went for a walk one day, and he asked me why I was alone now, and he said that I had the right to bring someone into my life. I had never considered this because I felt overwhelmed by my responsibilities as a mom. Zach told me that one day they might have children too, and they didn't want to leave me alone. My daughter-in-law was considerate because in the end, it was Zach who encouraged me to not be alone. I told her that I could consider it, but I felt somehow ignorant and insecure about these matters. I would have been much happier if Caroline wasn't in my life. Then I wouldn't have this sense of being negligent mother in my mind, and maybe my life would be in a better place. While I was thinking about all this, I received a call from the rehabilitation center, and they informed me that Caroline attempted to harm herself. But she was sedated and asleep now, so you tell me, what should I do in this situation? Should I go see Caroline and play the role of a good mother again? Or should I run away from her? Update number 2. I agreed to go see her. I know that Caroline would not have the courage to attempt it anyways, because she was angry, thoughtless, and selfish. I know you may consider me cruel for speaking like this, but, as I said, I don't have any motherly love left for Caroline. Anyways, I went to the rehabilitation center to meet with the doctors and understand what I should do. When the doctor saw me, he mentioned that it was good that I had come because there were many families who had abandoned their children, or they thought I wouldn't come either, which they were quite right about. We entered the doctor's office and he began to tell me about Caroline. He explained that Caroline's memory was distorted, so she remembered her father as an optimistic alcoholic while she saw me as the person who caused harm to her father, and was actually responsible for his death. The doctor recommended that both of us go through therapy to improve Caroline's memory, which would increase her chances of recovery. I wasn't sure if Caroline would agree, even if I did. Well, a week later, when the doctor told me that Caroline had accepted, I was very uneasy. I was afraid that she might harm me again. Zach had a somewhat reserved attitude toward his therapy, and I understood him. If something happened to me there, he would sue the rehabilitation center. In my mind, he's still a little kid, and he's still quite charming. I almost wished it was just Zach. I went to therapy, and when Caroline saw me, her face darkened. The doctor asked me to share a memory about Caroline, and I told him about the day I took her to the amusement park when she was 7 years of age, because she used to be like my little daughter, something that was just mine. Caroline claimed that this memory was not real, and she didn't remember it. I called her stupid. I was genuinely surprised by her behavior. Did she really love her father so much back then that she should have died with him? Come on. The doctor was somewhat annoyed with my harsh attitude, but I truly could not be patient anymore. Caroline gets super angry at this point and wrecked the doctor's office. She looked at me with this angry look on her face as if she wanted to attack me. My fears of her were right there, and it's incredible how sometimes you can look at your own child with fear and disappointment. Caroline started telling a story about how I beat her when she came home late from school, and when I heard this, I was so shocked that I turned to her and shouted, "That never happened, I never hit you." Caroline claimed that she didn't remember it, but said that's how she called it. She remembered the one thing that I kept from her in the same way, and I jumped from the chair and ran out, holding back that I wanted to tell her something. but I couldn't do it without consulting the doctor. The reason she hated me wasn't because of something I did, and this is quite funny because I never harmed her. And I'm not like that low to hit my child. I was trying to control my anger outside the office. Well, update number 3. The doctor came up to me and asked about my condition. And when I inquired if I should tell her what happened, he said that I should, as Caroline was now an adult. When I returned to the room, Caroline was looking at me with these teary eyes. I calmed down and turned to Caroline, explaining that I was not the one who had hit her, but that I tried to protect her. She knew her father was an alcoholic, but she didn't believe that all the bad deeds came from him. She was such a foolish child. When I explained everything to her, she gets angry. She tried to attack me again. And the doctor had to escort me outside. He told me it's a good start because Caroline was now questioning herself and trying to understand what was right and what was wrong. Well, it wasn't good. I was still so angry with Caroline. She had disrupted my life, and all for the sake of protecting her father so that he would not get away with that. Leaving the rehabilitation center, I went back home, and to my surprise, Zach was there waiting for me. He even prepared a meal for me, and I told him about the time I spent in the rehabilitation center, and I wanted him to know that his sister was a bad person, perhaps one that could never be a part of our lives, and that I might take steps to keep her there. I told Zach about how his sister blamed me for everything, how she didn't remember events when she was just a baby, and how despite my efforts to protect her from the alcoholic father that she defended, Zach was very sad to hear all this, and he assured me that he would be more supportive and that he never wanted his sister around in the first place. He promised to treat me better. His kind and thoughtful heart made me happy. When I suggested to Zach that we might need to take a break from the visits, if it made him sad, he refused, stating that he wanted to stay to support me because he was my son. When I went back to therapy, Caroline was looking at me with hatred, and there was also suspicion and apprehension in her behavior, and it just seemed like an empty development to me. The doctor told Caroline to ask me questions, and she started asking about her childhood. I told her that I used to read her bedtime stories, that I would kiss and hug her when I came home from work, and that I used to make surprise desserts for her, and that I recounted many beautiful memories with her. Caroline was bewildered by what she heard because her father was not the same person that she had imagined and believed him to be. I hope she feels remorseful as she remembers these things. After her treatment, Caroline hugged me and apologized, then returned to her room. This simple act had momentarily shaken me, and for a moment I felt like my little girl had returned. About a month later, the doctor told me that Caroline was showing signs of improvement. She was no longer having these anger fits, and she had become much calmer, even starting to take notes in her notebook. These developments surprised me greatly, and I considered postponing my revenge plan. Guys, what do you think I should do? Update number 4. When I got home, I packed up all of Caroline's belongings, and I was planning to take them to the center. Zach expressed his wish to come with me before the next therapy session and wanted to stay by my side. I told him that he could come to the next therapy session and that I would discuss it with the doctor. When I went for the session, Caroline was looking at me with a calm and indifferent gaze. People might see a grown woman when they look at Caroline, but to me, she had not matured at all. She was still spoiled and irresponsible child. Perhaps she might feel remorse, so I postponed my revenge plan. But from what I saw, her recollection had not changed anything. So I thought that there's no need, for her to be in the center any longer. She should continue with her treatment and my anger would subside. After all, I set my plans for revenge aside. However, I still could not believe that she would change. I continued with therapy to see how Caroline was progressing. Caroline was looking at me with these calm, indifferent eyes. When people looked at Caroline, they might see a grown woman, but I believe that she never grew up. She was still the same, spoiled, irresponsible child at heart, but I decided to suspend my revenge plan, hoping that maybe she'd change as she remembered. Well, one day, Caroline said something that surprised me. She no longer remembered all the things that she's done in the past, with her memory being quite selective. I decided that she should keep going with her treatment, and my vengeance could wait. The doctor was the only one who was irritated me at this point. A few minutes later, I heard a scream, and at first I did not understand what happened, and then I realized that Caroline had heard something. The doctor came to me and started saying that I should not leave my daughter, and I told him I'd only bring her things and that from now on I would not come. I asked him for the documents that would allow Caroline to stay at the center, and the doctor brought the documents with a saddened look on his face, and although he judged me, I didn't care. I signed the documents, and in the meantime, they gave Caroline a sedative and took her back to her room. When I returned home, Caroline sent me letters the following days expressing her remorse. However, I couldn't trust her. I felt like she might do the same thing again if she left the center. In her letters, she recalled some beautiful memories that we shared. I believe she had turned cunning and deceitful like her father, and in some of the letters she talked about considering unaliving herself for a while, apologizing for what she had done to me and wanting to, comfort me for her past actions. She even said she didn't hate me, only that she was scared and simply angry, which made her behave the way she did. She apologized to me, but I had no sympathy left for her, and her words did not warm my heart or soften me in any way. She also mentioned her love and jealousy towards her sister, but it all sounded like nonsense to me. She had ensured her sister suffered, and now it was as if she had never done such things. Reading these writings made me both laugh and get angry, so I called the doctor and told him that I did not want more letters. I had completely abandoned Caroline, and I decided to leave the past behind, and there was nothing wrong with that. I was genuinely relieved. Don't you think so? How could a woman who didn't want to change ever again like her father in disguise? I hope she stays there forever. Update number 5. Hey guys, I haven't told you about what the doctor said to me. He informed me that Caroline had experienced anger outbursts and even, beaten somebody severely enough to send them to the hospital. I guess he told me this to confirm that I was right to make the decision to abandon her. It's been 6 months since I've went to the hospital or saw Caroline, and I feel much better and renewed. I have no doubts left. Zach has never spoken to his sister and has never asked about her as if she never existed. These days he's busy encouraging me to find a boyfriend and focus on my own life. Zach has never blamed me, and he's been very supportive. He's definitely my son. He looks at me with love for days and really wants me to get married, which amuses me. But I think I'm happier this way. I don't want the responsibility of someone else's family, and Jasmine told me she's pregnant, which is an extra piece of great news. Our family's moving forward strongly after all these events. She plans to name her daughter after me. What a wonderful daughter-in-law, right? I just hope Jasmine doesn't have the same fate as me, but even if she does, I'll always be there for her. Zach would make a great father, and I know they won't turn out like me. My grandchild's life will be wonderful, and I just wish Caroline were a good enough person to be there. I'm at ease because I took my revenge, but sometimes, perhaps because I'm a mother, I hope for the best for her. What do you think? I know she doesn't deserve this happiness. The doctor occasionally calls me to update Caroline's condition, and I feel like I'm punishing her until she learns a new lesson. And the punishment won't be over until she's wiser. I'll wait for Caroline to grow up as a mother. Zach insists that I should live with them because it's not good to live alone at this age. I told him I'm fine, I just wanted to focus on myself. Maybe I'll meet a man or pick up a hobby. I don't know, all I know is just to be happy. I can be a mother, but I'm also a human, and I can't be Caroline's caregiver all the time. I hope you understand my decision. Top comments from the update. Comment number 1. I feel really sorry for you. It must have been very tough to be a good mother and have your child turn against you like this. I don't even think I can understand what you've been through. But I believe you're not a bad mom, so please don't think that way. You believe in your child until the very end, and you never harbored hatred for her. If she had not done these things to you, you would not have sought revenge, and even then, you didn't seek revenge. You only gave her consequences to make her wiser because you always had hope. So please take care of yourself, OP. You still have your son and your grandchild, and you need to look after them. Comment number 2. Nah, I'm not having it. If you really loved your daughter, you would have stayed by her side even if she came to hate you. Your revenge were disgusting. It's quite funny how you just try to justify yourself.
When her behavior changed, you immediately turned your back on her, and you're casting a shadow on your son's happy marriage with your actions. You're a selfish woman who always seeks some sort of attention, and I hope you realize that. Don't become a bad example for your grandchild. I hope you won't darken your son's life like you did your daughter's.
Alright guys, so today's story, it was pretty controversial, and the reason I said that, a lot of the comments, as we just read one of the last commenters, they are not very happy with the fact that OP basically abandoned her daughter and their words. But I'll be completely real with you guys, there was another maybe 50% of the commenters who were totally in agreement with OP's decision, so this is one of those stories where the comment section from the original post and the updates kind of boils 50-50, and you don't really know which side is the majority of the people. So I want to ask you guys what you thought about the story, what you would have done if you had to handle this in OP's position, and the main important question I would say of the story: do you think OP went too far by basically giving up all rights to her daughter and sending her away? I just want to know your thoughts on that, guys, so thank you for joining me on today's video. My name's Mr. Reddito. I narrate stories like this every day. So if you want to be a part of these daily videos, hit that subscribe button. I'll see you tomorrow.